Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave, and no Mecci today. I think he's in the US. He said he was going to go over there, but it looks like he is there. But I think maybe he just landed or something. I don't think he can connect out to us. So I am coming to you live from the Freudian Slips Sydney studios, and if Mecci can get in, he'll be in the US studios. As one piece of the information super puzzle on Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. You can talk to us in the chat room while we're on air. We are live, by the way. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube to get updates between shows, and check out at shinysideout.net and now shinysideout.com.au for our show archives. Show notes and links we paste into the chat during the show. Get one of these apps for your smart device. Revolution Radio app. It's awesome on Android. TalkStream Live, both platforms, and also tunein.com on both platforms. Sorry, I don't know about Revolution Radio's app on the iPlatform, sorry. You can also purchase a Grace Tabletop Radio. Digital broadcasting, awesome. Or, what we prefer you do is go to www.freedomslips.com and jump in the chat. If you're in the US, the number to dial in is 347-688-2902, or if you have Skype and you've chatted to us previously in the chat room, jump in. You can add Freedom Screen. I'd like to say Ravenstar, awesome, absolutely awesome show. Well done for that. And yeah, it's a topic close to my heart. You get great guests and you lead in really well with what we talk about, and it's unbelievable. Thanks for doing that. And like I said, you've got a great show to listen to it every week. This is show number 65, and I'm really pleased to be on air. And once again, like I said, Paul Mecci is in transit, or he's in the US, maybe just landed, I don't know. But I heard when I called him, it went international, so he was mentioning that he was going to go overseas. But outside of that, look, straight away, I heard something today, but it's actually a couple of months old, and it was being hidden away from the Australian public. This is a bit of local Australian news, but it's going to be pertinent to everyone listening, and I'd really like it that you pick this information up. It's tragic that they have this connection to the banks. I'm talking about the governments here. This morning in the wee hours of my time, I was able to talk to Tones and Stew Noodle, and we found that the David Icke experience was live and well at the Bilderberg conference in the US. Alex Jones was there, and Kerry was there, but we didn't see her. Maybe our time frames were out. Quite a large crowd, maybe, well, my guess was between 5,000 and 8,000 people managed to get through, but the talk on the ground there was that there were many, many more people that couldn't get inside. They blocked it off to prevent, a rather large crowd from getting in. So that was good. It looked like David Icke's website was knocked off air at some point. Someone stole a Wi-Fi access point for Kerry. I think that's the word coming through. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And that's a lot of people. And it's truly a lot of people. And it was a peaceful riot. Right. Peaceful soapboxing is really what it was. Alex on a small stage with 2 speakers and a microphone in front of between 5,000 and 8,000 people. I thought the topics he was talking about were valid. I didn't know there was that many people in the London area that were willing to do this, and they weren't old, middle-aged men. They were 20 to 30-year-olds, and I thought that was an amazing thing. So think about this. There's a new group of people out there on the same track we are, and I think that's amazing. But the news story that floored me, and I'm going to paste this into the chat, it was done back in February of this year, and the Australian government, what they did was sneakily rush this through Parliament with only a couple of people voting for it, and they'd proved it. And it was the very law that allows the government to seize the money in your bank account if you haven't made a transaction either in or out of your account in 3 years. That doesn't seem like very much. Isn't that a surprise to you, that the government can take your money? I mean, what? Apparently it used to be 7 years. Now, I think that's an interesting idea, given that you might, be dead 7 years. Oh, that's fair enough. But what would happen if you're a lovely parent and your grandparents passed away and you put some of the money into an account for your children, maybe for their education? I don't know, you name it. You name the reason why you'd put money in a bank account and not touch it. Well, guess what? When you go to get it, it doesn't exist. And that's rotten. I don't know when I ever voted for a government. I don't know when this ever happened. As far as I know, that they'd never advertised that they were going to do this. And I think all governments must advertise what they're going to do and not do anything else at all, because we didn't vote for them to do it. We didn't approve it. We're the nation. We should approve what they do and don't do. And if you call that a democracy, what we currently live in, I think you are horribly mistaken. Clearly, I've woken up on the wrong side of the bed. I woke up on the Alex Jones side of the bed this morning, watching him and listening to the YouTube clips from David Icke. Extraordinary. What a way to wake up. And then be told that, what? You can have your money taken away from you from your very own bank account just because you put it away to earn interest. Yeah, right. Okay. Next topic, and I'll try not to be so angry. You don't know how I am. I'm boiling in my skin about that. You don't know. The government, the reason why they did it was because they were going to be $15 million in the red, and they discovered if they passed that law, they'd suddenly have acquisitioned $109 million in the same year, just by doing that. Suddenly they got access. How do they have access to that money? There was no agreement in which I signed with my bank saying that the government could ever take my money away. There wasn't one. And I don't know what fantastic universe we live in where the government thinks they've got access to my money for free without discussion. No discussion would take place. In fact, the news story talks about an 80-year-old who had put some money away from her own savings into an account, and when they went to give it to the children before she passed away, it wasn't there. And it took them like 5 years to get it back through some great arguments and legal battles. And what legal shouldn't even come into it. The Treasury just comes and takes it. Like, think about that. We're looking at Cyprus. Cyprus, they just said, oh, if you've got any more than whatever it was, $250, say, right? We just own it. Now, that should never have occurred. At no point should the government ever have access to your money. It's bad enough the bank goes belly up and you got nothing. That's one thing. Clearly, someone still has the checkbook on the other side of that wall, the barrier that doesn't let you get their money out. And yeah, they still pay their executives their bonuses or whatever as the company goes upside down. And yeah, they pay their creditors. But this isn't anything to do with them. Sorry about my rant, guys. But that's what it looks like. And I really want to know, if you have your child, squashing aluminium cans or aluminum cans and taking them to the recycling plant, for 10 years, and they've been a good kid, and, something happens to them, I don't know, they have a bicycle accident or something, and they just don't deposit any money in that account. When they go to get it, it's gone. They might have slaved for 10 years to get that money built up. They're going to buy their PlayStation 3 or whatever it is, happy as Larry. They got their bank book in their hand. Let's get down the bank and get that money out, son. Let's buy you something. And there's nothing there. I think seriously, I think the government has to think about it. Look at it, take a good look at itself in the mirror, and all it's going to see are thieves. That's what they are. Anyway, on to something lighter. A Chinese airliner collided with something in the air. And I think following on from the previous show, we're talking about aliens and UFOs, the headline is E.T. phone insurance. E.T. phone insurance. Because the Chinese passenger aircraft had a high altitude collision with an unknown object. And it crumpled in the nose cone so severely that it caused air turbulence down that side of the aircraft, and it made it unsteerable or something. It altered the flight characteristics of that plane, and it was unable to continue. So it flew back to the airport and landed safely, thank heavens. But it occurred at 26,000 feet. Now, everyone had said, oh, it's a bird. Yeah, right. If you know any birds that fly at 26,000 feet, please paste it into the Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com chat room, and let me know right now, because that's just not possible. There's not enough oxygen at that altitude. So there's paint scrapings and everything. It's something else. Normally there's blood, however, there's no blood in this case. There's only one of two incidences ever in the air with a bird where there wasn't any blood, but this one doesn't appear to be a bloodless incident. It would have had to be the size of an ostrich doing 500 miles an hour to do that. And there's obviously pictorial evidence showing the same kind of thing. So I don't know if I pasted it. I've been ranting too hard. So that's the money banking thing. Here's the lovely story here about from Ghost Theory, but it's collaborated across a whole bunch of different sites. Another UFO story. This is current as well. This is from the 8th of June. So that was your today, my yesterday, because I'm talking to you from the future. I've had far too much coffee today. Okay, so this story is really cool. This is 3 passenger jets flying near Gatwick in London, which is London's second airport, had a close encounter with an unidentified flying objects, or more than one, like saucers, silver saucers. In fact, one of the plane's pilots said that they saw 2 discs hovering above the airport, and he was the first to raise the alarm, and he was in a 777. He said 2 flat discs, and it was 8:53 GMT. So according to the Sun paper, just minutes later, crews of a Boeing 767 and an Airbus 319 observed the same thing, saucer-like shapes. The crew of the 777, the first one, also claimed that they looked man-made or toy-like, which is pretty cool. Now, it does go on to say that it was hovering near the Scientology building, but I don't see any connection there whatsoever. So I think we have to consider this as another plausible thing. It was they were seen as ground targets from the ground radar, and 3 different planes saw the same things hovering above the airport. I think that's an awesome story. It just keeps going, and I won't go on, but I'll paste it in so you can read it of your own accord. One of the other ones, this is a funny story, this one, and I have to tell you, whatever you do not do this at home. Honest. And I don't care if you're having a Chinese meal right now and you're listening to this and you're staring at the soy sauce bottle, forget it. Do not do this. And I'm going to say this, and I mean this politely. An idiot who drank a whole quart of soy sauce went pretty much straight away into a coma and nearly died from an excess of salt in his body. He was 19, and he was dared by his friends, and he nearly deliberately overdosed. Now, normally the people who drink this and end up in hospital are people who are incapable of making decisions for themselves. So there might be someone who's disabled, someone who has no taste or smell, and it consumes, like a quart of, Coca-Cola, but they can't tell, and they just drink soy sauce. But what it does to you, it gives you hypernatremia. No, I'll get it again. Hypernatremia. There we go, hypernatremia. And it causes your brain to dehydrate. You get, basically the hypernatremia is when there's too much salt in the bloodstream. It says water moves out of the body tissues and into the blood by the process of osmosis to try to equalize the salt concentration. So your body is smart enough to go, oh, too much salt, let's put some water in your blood, and then your brain dehydrates because the water leaves the brain. And it can also shrink and bleed, so you can get an aneurysm from it. So it's actually pretty dangerous stuff, especially the Western diet isn't used to that much salt. Eastern diet can take a lot more salt than we can, believe it or not. They don't like as much sugar, but the cure is actually sugar. So you feed a watered-down dose of glucose directly into their stomach, and you're good to go. But I'll tell you that a single quart of soy sauce has 1/3 of a pound of salt. Like I said, can I reiterate? What an idiot. Anyway, that's my problem, and I'll get over it. So I hope you like those news stories for today. I've stalled enough, and there's still no Mecci, and I believe he's not going to meet the show today. But that's okay, because you've got me. Insert maniacal laughter here. Oh boy! So every single person I've been trying to get in touch with to have a quick interview, like a last minute. Can I put you on the last minute list? Sure, why not? Then you ask them, and there's no response, purely because of our time frame. It's terrible. Oh boy! And I'll tell you that the Nexus conference is coming up on June 22nd, 3rd, and 4th. And for me, it's quite a ways away. It's an hour and a half by plane, but it's like 1,300 kilometers away, and it's held at a resort, so it makes it impossible to stay anywhere else. It's quite isolated. So the tickets are like $300. The plane trip is about maybe at $200, about $150 maybe one direction because it's a long weekend or a weekend. But the return might be a cheap flight. Outside of that, there's still having to commute between there and the other end. I was looking at probably a cost of about $800 to $1,000. And I initially said when I looked at the ticket prices, just for 2 days, it's like $200, about $120 a day. And I said to my partner, my loving partner, my long-suffering loving partner, I said to her, you know what? How about I get up there? She goes, but I'm working, and good luck. Do you want to go? Really? I have to look after the kids. And I said, well, we can get someone. She said, we can get someone to look after the kids. Don't worry about it. You organize yourself, and you can get up there. And it's like I started looking at the cost and went, oh, what? It's not like road trip in the car, and you can drive up, and it's all free. And all you do is turn up and pay for the daily ticket, and you're good to go, and sleep in a car or whatever. I was really hoping to maybe like a live feed like Jason does, and I'm not crying poor, because I'm not poor, but that's just a lot of money, and I don't think I can do it. But since Douglas Dietrich's going up there, hopefully there's something that we can front Revolution Radio, the envoy for Rev Radio. But yeah, if you see it in your heart, shinysideout.net has a donate button up the top right-hand side, That's all I'm not gonna plead with my case. So, what are we going to talk about tonight? I've done my 22 minutes. Last week we were halfway through doing the flood proof. Now I don't know how Mecci would feel if I was to take the last half of that show, but since I can't get anyone on late notice, I think I'm going to have to. Unless you really want to now, I want to see something in the chat room here. Whether you want me to continue the flood stuff, or you want to wait until Mecci comes back and we'll just maybe have a light fun show. It's going to be up to you guys. This is fully interactive radio. That's okay. I've got a message from Mecci, who's actually in a client meeting in the States right now, and he's been kind enough to message me and say, look, I can't get out of the meeting. So, flood myths or not flood myths? I want to see you guys type something in the chat. We've got heaps of people in the chat. While we wait for an answer, let's have a look to see who's in there. We've got Kat, of course, Hal. You've got to talk to Hal. Hal's awesome. I like typing in redneck, politely, of course, because it's a, what does Jeff Foxworthy says? He says, it's a glorious lack of sophistication. And when you do that, you'll get a joke. And it says, you might be a redneck if Jack Daniels makes your list of most admired people. Hey, he's on mine. We had Tones, Bo Bear, Adele Australia, Cam Black, Hans, Hans, Monster 383. Oh, we've got Trivia Bot. There's actually a competition going in at the moment. So if you're hearing the show, jump in the chat room and you can answer the trivia questions as they come up. That's pretty fun. I never get any of them, even though some of them are related to Australia. Brennan, AFK, Comet, Dude Guy, Dread Shoes, and I'm going to invite Dread to come on since Mecci's not here. Jer Bear, Hated Patriot. In fact, I don't believe that's true. I think he wouldn't be hated. Or he or she. I can't be sexist. Could be anybody. Could be an it. Maybe it's an alien. You know, if there's any greys out here listening, you're welcome. Just step into the room. You know you've done it before. I need coffee. Oh, actually, do you know what I'm doing? I am drinking my 20-ounce coffee cup, from my 20-ounce coffee cup, 20 ounces of coffee, and you know what? This is, wow, I'm reading the side. I'm surprised. This says Revolution Radio with Dave and Mecci. That's a surprise. www.shinysideout.net. And when I turn this enormous mug around, it has 3 big letters. It says SSO, www.freedomslips.com, and then vertically in grey it says Shiny Side Out. This is an awesome bit of merchandise, and I urge you to get one. I had to buy my own. I designed it. Please, whatever you do, jump onto our website, and there's a merchandise tab. Get yourself one. It's on Zazzle. Enjoy it. I do. I bought some for my friends for Christmas. I know it's a bit hedonistic, but, you know, they love the size of the mug. What the hell? What can you say? Who else do we have? I got stopped at Jer Bear Hatred. Yeah, I need coffee. That's right. Just in Time is there. Then there's Narara and me. Say hi to me in the chat room. If you're in, you're Weisenberg. And now all the people who aren't admins. A. Barros. Amanda Mays, Annie O, Avi, or Avi, I think, Benetti, or Ben Nettie, or B Nettie, no, Benetti, Baron, Check MI6, oh, I like that, that's nice. You know, you can have any name you want, jump into the chat. Cooper, David T, oh, that would be awesome if it was my old mate that I used to work with. Say hi, Dave, if you're listening. Greenheart, hemp. There's so many good things you can do with hemp. I am Lone Frog, Inflamed Thrower. That's funny. JMJ12, hey JMJ12. Hey Avi. Thanks Avi, that's a funny joke. Las Vegas PI, Martin IP. There's two monkeys, 5, 6, and 2, 5. Moxie, Pam, Rapsy, RC, Red Robin, Rico, Rick Rock about that. A couple of Smoopies, so you got 2871, 8783, 950. Simply Red, very nice. That's classy. Looks like a second ID for that same person. They'd have jumped out and come back in again. Suran. Okay, Suran. Sorry, Sunflower, Thunderbird, Tomcat, and Zap. Zap. Very nice. Zap. It's me, Cress. Hey guys. So I'm gonna beg, because of lack of content and lack of response from you guys. I'm not seeing anyone in here asking that I continue with the flood myths. Tone says flood myths or no flood myths. I don't think he cares. No Mecci, Gerr, that's right. Oh, let's go in and party. Yeah! And in fact, call me up. Call me up, guys, and we'll, if you want, I'll pull you in. I'm going to pull in some old faithfuls. Are you ready, guys? Okay, number 1 on the list. See if she's up. Number 2. Who else we got? There's my good friend. There he is. He's coming in. Who else do we have? We have 3, 2, 1. Okay, we've got Gerr Bear on the line, whose mic is clearly muted. Anytime he's ready. There we go. Hi Gerr, how you doing? Hello Gerr.
Hey, howdy folks. How y'all doing out there in Australia?
We's doing fine, Gerr.
All right, you guys kicking it. Where's my buddy Mecci?
He's actually over there.
Oh, okay. Hi, Mex.
Yeah. He got stuck in a meeting and he can't get out of it. It's really funny.
I told us how you guys doing.
Hi.
Hi. Going to Mars? Where are we going tonight? Mars?
I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do.
Let's just go kick it on the strip.
Yeah, all right.
I'll show you guys the hot clubs of Vegas.
Sounds good with me. Yeah, so I'm having a problem because of poor Mecci, man. He's stuck in a client meeting and he can't get out of it. And he's over in the States. He flew over during the week.
Yeah.
And I don't know why would he still be in a client meeting at this time of night.
What, is he on West Coast, East Coast? Because it's like
I think he'd be West Coast, yeah.
It's about almost midnight here.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
You know those client meetings at the bar, man.
Yeah.
You know how they go.
Open tab and rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
You know how they go.
Yeah, well, you know what happens in a client meeting.
Yeah, stays in the client meeting.
Mm-hmm.
The chorus girls come.
I used to like being in the old days over here. You could your BDM would call you up and say, you know, do you want to go out for coffee? You go, yeah, cool, no worries. And then, you know, that might kick on afterwards. And I remember having, I didn't realize how much coffee I'd had, because I had a couple of them in the day, really tight meetings close to each other, back to back. And then the guy goes, oh, let's just go down, you know, so we went to the Opera House. You're probably all familiar with that. Looks like a stack of shells. And we went down there, and there's something going on down there, and it's sort of... Next thing, it's night time, and the table's covered in beer glasses.
And shots.
Oh, no. He's a beer guy. And we drank so much. He's actually a stand-up comedian as well, one of my old BDMs. And he has his own comedy thing. It's really, really funny. And I just looked at him, I go, I can't drive. No way. Sudden realization. I think we've all had one of those. But we were talking shop for most of it, and it was just really funny.
Time flew, huh?
Oh, it'll do that. So, did you hear what I was saying about the news? I don't want to backtrack too much, but what was your take on the bank's ability to take money from your own account?
3 years, huh?
Yeah.
Well, of inactivity.
Yeah, well, of inactivity, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's no deposits and no withdrawals
Deposits,
from
no
your
withdrawals, no payments, no just money, just the funds sitting there, just the digital numbers sitting there, right?
Mm-hmm.
My credit card company, my credit union did that to me because I let it go stagnant so long, and I just never went over there to manage it. And I had like $25 in it, and they started charging me for inactivity, and I just ignored it. And finally, they closed the account. And I was with them since approximately 1980. But I did a lot with them. But once I bought this house, I didn't have that much activity with them. But oh well, that's the way it rolls.
So, do you think the government's got not the bank doing it, but the government? Do you think the government should have access to your money in your own account?
Well, I've heard that actually it's their money when you have it in their account. When you have an account,
what the government's money?
No, the bank. I don't know if it's true, but if it's in their bank, it's actually theirs.
But it's an agreement between you and them for them to hold it. The agreement is that they hold it safely for you.
Right, and then in the really fine print it says if there's no activity on the account, we could take your money in 3 years. I mean, I don't know that I'm saying that's what it probably says there now.
Mm-hmm. No, that's the funny thing. It doesn't. It's the government's ability to take it if you have no activity.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, completely. Like I can imagine if you died and there was no activity.
Right.
Fine. It just goes to the Treasury. It goes to the government. Whatever, yeah? That's fine. I think that they'd have to prove that you were dead. And there should be some correspondence that's also entered into between you and them, or an attempt to. If it's worth, $25,000, they should send someone to your house to see where you are. Do you exist?
Or you should have some kind of some backup on there that they can notify or at least refer. There was a person that I don't know if it was Wells Fargo or Bank of America, but they came into some money, so they were going to pay off their house, their mortgage.
Yep.
And that bank foreclosed on them, so they couldn't do that.
Huh. Really?
Yeah, I heard it some time back, but I said that sounds like them greedy bees.
I mean, that's just completely. I just don't get it. I really don't. I mean, at what point I got riled up because Tones, you were with me this morning. We're watching the Alex Jones,
Bilderberg.
Bilderberg conference thing. Yeah, Bilderberg peaceful sit-in. The soapboxing. Mm-hmm. I think the soapboxing could be equivalent of just slapping people with a fish.
There's a lot of people there, man.
Mm-hmm. And so that was such a huge event. And I was surprised in the end to see that the police were hugging the people. Is that weird?
That's showing a pretty good sign that a positive goal. That
good for good for publicity.
Yeah, that'll get on the telly. I hunted around after it finished, Tones, and when I said I was going upstairs to have something to eat, I was hunting around on the TV trying to find any kind of coverage on it, and there was nothing.
Yeah.
All the international, even the ones that they throw across the UK news stations, no one was touching it.
I was watching some of Jon Stewart's political satire and
his last show?
some of its recent stuff with the Benghazi and other things happen. And boy, he's pretty awesome, you know.
Mm-hmm. He was handing it over to someone, wasn't he?
I'd like to get him on a show, man, with somebody here at Revolution Radio. I think he'd draw some numbers in here. Have a guess. Huh?
But isn't he handing his show over to someone else? Didn't I see that?
I'm not sure. I just kind of catch him now and then in YouTube when I'm fluttering around looking at things.
I swear, he's just the news of him handing it over to some guy was just out.
Someone coming up?
Yeah, someone else. He's handing it to them.
Cool. Did you want to have a tinfoil hat moment?
Oh yeah, man. Give it to me. What is it?
Small asteroid 2013 LR6 will safely fly past this evening at 9:42 p.m. Pacific Time, which is June 8th, 12:42 a.m. Eastern Time. So
how many hours from now? 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
Oh.
Asteroid LR6, 2013 LR6, was at a distance of 65,000 miles away, 0.0007 AU above the Earth's surface.
Mm-hmm.
And the space rock, which is about 30 feet, 10 meters in diameter, will be above the Southern Ocean, south of Tasmania, at the time of the closest approach. So I guess it zipped by. And I'm just wondering if we're going to start seeing some potential meteorite reportings around the world.
Okay, well, 2 hours ago would have been 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or thereabouts. And you know how we've spoken about this before, which is they don't normally see them in advance if they're on the sun side. So if it's a new rock they've never seen before and it's coming from the side where the sun is, it's completely obscured by the brightness of the sun. They just never see it. And so some of these things, you can still, even today with all of our measuring gear, we can still miss an object and not see it coming in, yeah?
That's what I'm trying to say. Like,
I know.
The day of DA-14, the meteorite that came down in Russia.
Uh-huh.
Hijacker still thinks that is DA-14.
No, DA-14 flew past a keyhole and it's coming back. It's coming back in 2023. That's a prediction. That's what it seems like it's going to do. Because it keyhole, just like Apophis will keyhole. And
Apophis?
Apophis?
Did you say Apophis?
Have I not mentioned that before? Yes, Apophis.
Yes, Apophis.
So Apophis will keyhole in 2029, come back for April 13, 2036. And it'll be a west coast, or just off the west coast of the US in the Pacific, and depending on the position inside the keyhole. So if you drew 9 dots, if it was on the left middle, it'll be middle Pacific next to California. If it's north, it'll be, north of California in, maybe Alaska, or Canada. Down below, it could be, Midwest or the Gulf. But if you go, to the east of those, west of those, and if you go center, it's going to be bang on the coastline. If you go, in the right-hand top, middle, and lower one, it'll be a continental USA or Gulf of Mexico splashdown. And that splashdown is the end of the US, regardless of which side of that it goes. There, we're talking a 10-kilometer or 10-mile high wave wash over the Rockies. Even if it was in the Pacific. This is how big that object is, and that's 2036. So I don't care what anyone says, and I don't care, this is what we're looking at happening, and so far there's no technology that proves to me that we know how to get that thing out of the way. There's no Bruce Willis flying up in a space shuttle and going to do anything. And yeah, there's talk about practicing nukes and things, but in deep space, the nuke just goes poof, like popcorn. There's nothing to force anything away from itself. So it has almost zero impact. It has to be a sustained and long burst of like a rocket, like a retro firing, just to move it a few degrees here or there, just to slim past us. But it's still possible. There could be, a whole flotilla of rocks coming from somewhere else that we just either happen into, like a kid throwing something off an overpass or something, yeah. Don't do that at home.
Right.
But that's something that could happen with the
or
Earth.
Another object.
Yeah,
that,
just a debris field we go through.
We'll put another object up next to it that just slightly pulls its gravity into a different keyhole.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. So, just that's
Out of play.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So yeah, it doesn't have to be very big. Just a long, sustained effort is enough to nudge it off just a few degrees, and so its impact is later, not this time around.
I still think that's the trick. To catch a ride on an asteroid or a comet, you catch a ride on one of these things, and you get yourself out to a further part of the solar system, and you jump from there to another one. You ride that one out. You keep jumping them.
I like the idea.
Yeah.
When you have comets which are just big ice balls,
Right.
just imagine, just with me for 1 second, tinfoil hat time.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Awesome. Just think about the possibility of someone from somewhere else sent us a space probe to check us out, but by the time it got here, it was just one big ball of ice and ends up orbiting the sun. Like Halley's Comet, for instance. Imagine if that's what it actually was. Imagine our Viking 1 and 2 that got pushed out to another solar system somewhere that's still in transit. That's a long way. By the time it gets there, it's going to have accumulated so much stuff. And it'll just be one big blob of ice and hopefully won't impact their planet and they come back and hate us for it. You bastards! So I can see where it could be possible as a scenario that any asteroid any comet that we care to name could in fact be that. We don't know. Maybe it was a previous attempt from a previous civilization to make it out, and it just never did. Maybe it froze up. I don't know. There's some interesting concepts there.
There is. NASA was successful at hitting a comet back in 2005, right? Deep space, deep impact. NASA sent that space probe right into comet 9P Temple, smashed it right into it. And that thing was traveling pretty fast. So obviously they can do that. The timing of that is unbelievably impeccable.
The maths is complicated. Yep.
Yeah, the mathematics behind this is so complicated. Well, it's the same thing how they got Cassini probe way out to the outer rings there. You know what they use, the gravity assist flyby, they call that.
Slingshots. Yep.
Yeah. It's fun, slingshots. It's a great time.
So, Chris, you've mentioned before that you've about Mars, yeah?
Yeah, it's fun. I've been there twice. Been there. It's a great time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, did you see the film that I recommended to you this morning?
I did, and I had seen it prior. I knew as soon as I turned it on, like 5 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, I saw it.
Okay, for everyone listening, we're talking about Iron Sky, It's a great film. It's a fun romp, and some of the things that I liked that were the towing of asteroids into low Earth orbit and letting them go so they fall down onto your opposition as a mechanism of war.
Right.
I like that concept in the film. It really said something to me. That if you were a spacefaring race, that would sort of make sense. It's sort of like, what is it, Starship Troopers, when the bugs started doing the same thing. Am I alone? I think I'm up with that one.
I'm just muted. I'm muted, listening in, multitasking.
Oh boy, but I swear, most of my best jokes are probably physics. My goodness, surely you've seen Starship Troopers, Tones.
Of course. I just don't remember. I don't remember things when I watch them, unfortunately.
No, never mind.
I have this mechanism that just, forgets about the movie after I watch it so that I can watch it again and it's fresh.
That's good.
like I've never seen it before, yeah.
Like a goldfish.
Yeah, pretty much,
That's great. That would be so cheap. You'd be a cheap date.
Yeah, that's the whole point, is when you watch it again with somebody else, it's like you haven't, you go into it like you haven't seen it.
Mm-hmm. Instead of, say, me and a friend of mine watching Pulp Fiction, it's like you just have to reenact it. Watch it.
Yeah, there's definitely some classics that I've seen several times that, that I remember all of it, I mean, The Godfather was on in my house every other day growing up. Godfather, Goodfellas, Bronx Tale, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so.
Oh, that's.
Anyway. What were you were going to talk about flood myths, man.
Yeah. One of the things that this is some of the proof that we've got from all around the world. It's an extraordinary thing to, we've spoken about those stories, yeah, from all the people around. We've spoken how each town has a tale that these people survived and they created the rest of the people in the town and, in fact, all the people on Earth. But from their isolated point of view, that would be the case. But when you see all those stories together, and you have to, filter out where it's cross-contamination between, civilizations along the way, but for the most part, even the most isolated ones all have a flood story from some point in time, and that this couple it has to be a couple, survived because they did this.
Right.
The person who etched it into stone all alone didn't procreate to make another town. So that's a bit of a disappointment there. If you have to live on your own, find someone when the water comes. So we ended last week in, during the Ice Age. This was the release of potential energy. And it's during an Ice Age, the sea level drops, and snow accumulates, forming a mile-thick ice sheet in the polar regions and high latitudes. The loss of ocean mass places the Earth slightly out of equilibrium due to the shape and the height of the ice. And the massive ice sheets have potential energy. For a visual example, you can think of an avalanche. The impact can trigger the release of this potential energy if you have an impact into one of these ice sheets, and that can have a sudden move of the ice sheet because it's going to be running on the liquid underneath it as a ball bearings, as we've seen with the glacial movements of recent times in the last 20 years. And some of these are significant. And so this water can, it's 500 cubic miles, and sudden release of this can do some enormous things, like make the Grand Canyon. It can make the desert, not the Mojave Desert, but the other one, New Mexico Desert, with all of the mesas. It can have such a significant effect on the landscape. And it also accounts for there being, the sudden melts and sudden water is the reason for all of the salt lakes around. It wasn't that the land went up and left these behind. It was as though there was a washover of the sea, and those puddles have slowly dried up over time. So what other things have we seen which can line up with, say, a large impact? Because we're talking about an impact as being a possible global flood, and it lines up at the same time period as there being raining fire from the sky in a certain pocket near India. So in the Indian Ocean, the top of the Indian Ocean, near the Himalayas, where India pushes into the landmass to create the Himalayas, there's story of it raining fire and rain and floods all at the same time, and that would be consistent with there being a large impact into the ocean, which I haven't seen on Google Earth yet, but I'm still waiting. So the temperature rise, a temperature rise of approximately 7 degrees or 13 degrees Fahrenheit occurred at the end of the last ice age. This was a result of a heat released by, and there's some choices, a natural temperature rise as Earth stepped out of the glacial period, the asteroid or comet impact, volcanoes and lava flows, which would obviously also be contributed to an impact, and increased solar absorption. So the darkening of the average color of the Earth, so changing from white to a dark ocean, and we know that now from watching the the Arctic ice disappearing, and it's creating an accelerated or runaway effect there. Now it's quite possible that the North and South Poles never had ice on them, and it's only as a result of there being either a large impact or a clouding over of our atmosphere which made it cold enough to create them, and then it just takes ages, literally ages, no pun intended, because that's a description of the period of time, ages for them to melt, and that it's just going to return back to the way it should be in the first place. But because we live on the Earth, and we're living in the Earth like it's a single photograph, that's how short our time has been on here, we can't determine how quickly anything's really going, and all we've got is ice core, tubes to check out the age of anything. So that's pretty hard. But if we looked at an asteroid or comet impact, a large impactor of 2 miles in diameter will release energy equivalent to approximately 1 million megatons of TNT. This impact energy is equivalent to 12.6 times the total annual energy usage throughout the entire world today, all released in a split second. The world energy consumption equals 316 quadrillion BTUs. Absolutely. That's a lot. And that's a 1995 figure from the World Bank. This energy would be released under the skin of a large great glacial sheet if an estimated half of the impact energy was released in the form of heat. The rest is compression waves and... what happened to Rob? Did you try to drag him in, Tony?
Yeah, I did.
Oh. That's okay, I'm happy. Looks like Pony tried. Did you try and pull Pony in? Looks like he wants in. I'll pull him in, but we'll be going to the break in a second.
Yeah, do you have Robert on your list too?
Yeah, I'm just going to check. Sorry, everyone. Bear with me. No, I don't.
Sending it right now for you.
Awesome. So basically, what it says through our research, it said that we talked about the world consumption is 316 quadrillion BTUs. Well, the number is so large, that's a billion. That's 2 billion BTUs of heat would be produced in a split second from the impact. That's a lot. So a BTU, if you don't know, is a British thermal unit, which is acquired basically 1 pound of water. What energy is used to increase 1 pound of water by 1 degree Fahrenheit.
Right.
So
the old school air conditioners, big ones used to
work in BTUs. You know, when I used to design computer rooms, we used to have to work them on BTUs as well.
Mm-hmm.
We do it on watts now because it's just easier.
And you got to keep those rooms very cold.
Yeah, absolutely. So where's that ID? Where's that link? Tones?
Where's
Rob.
that what?
Where's Rob?
I sent him your way, and you should have added each other already.
Yeah.
Has he accepted?
No. That's okay. We'll go to the break and I'll do it during the break. Oh boy, what a show. I'm having fun. I hope you're all having fun listening.
Always down there.
Do you know what?
Light up my life.
Oh, you're cute. So just while we're in the break, check out www.shinysideout.net and enjoy. That's an awesome sound. I want more of that. So what's that promo?
Drum rolls.
What promo?
Oh, yeah, that's happening live. It's happening live, people.
I absolutely love that, 80s sound. I thought that was awesome. I thought that's what was going on in the chat, because I just absolutely love it.
What's up, Robert?
What's up, my brother? Now, I was expecting you to join me last night. Ditched out on me. Ditched out on me, Tones.
I was done. I was shot.
I bet you are. I could imagine you're done.
Yeah, I was shot.
Yeah, well, you've been shot for a while.
I'm shot out, man.
How about that? You've been shot out for a while.
And do you know what, guys? I had one of my web pages open, and I was actually hearing a promo for a new movie, and I thought Tones was doing it, but it wasn't coming up around his name that he was talking, and I'm going, where's that audio coming from? Because I'm hearing it in my head, and it was cued in perfectly at the end of the promo, or the bumper, for us to come in. I'm going, what? What sound? Where's that Tones? And no one else can hear it but me. That's really funny. I just have to say that you're back with David Mecci, Shiny Side Out on freedomsips.com. This is listener-funded radio. If you like what you hear, please go to freedomsips.com and push the donate button and donate what you can. Your donation is greatly appreciated and helps run this station. We are halfway through show number 65, and we're just talking about anything today. Before the break, we were talking about the impacts and stuff, but I want to lighten it up and, maybe just talk about some space stuff, maybe. And we've got on the call with me today, we have Tones, the delectably sounding Tones. He's awesome, probably the best radio voice that I've heard for a long time. Gerr Bear, hey Gerr, he's known as Gerr in the chat. And we've got Robert. Welcome aboard, Rob.
Well, thank you so much. And you're right about Tones' voice. He's got that sensual, deep, dark voice. And he just makes it happen. Yeah. There's no question about it.
It's really just a switch. I mean, here, let me flip it off. I really sound like this.
That's a good one, New Jersey. That's a good one, Mr. New Jersey.
This is the way I usually talk.
Hey, you guys sitting down at the corners over there, come over there and listen to my show, right?
That's right.
Tones, leave the switch in the other position. Thank you so much.
This position?
This
All
one.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, the in position and disposition. I like that. Very good.
Right. What would happen if a meteorite smacked into a volcano?
I'll tell you exactly what would happen. There would be a massive, probably, depending on if it sat on a fault line, if it impacted, depending on the size, the volume of that impact would probably, create something. What happened? Let's say here, where I live in Arizona, a 2 mile or 1 mile wide impact crater zone, probably, and that thing was only the size of basically a bus, Probably devastating, I'm going to say, in the surrounding area about 5 miles, not even considering what the projectiles would do coming back into the, as they projected in through the atmosphere and then impacted back on the ground. So that probably could affect easily a 50-mile wide area. That's just something the size of we're talking the size of a Volkswagen.
Mm-hmm. And how about the sky, like Iceland, completely getting darked out by the dust?
Oh yeah, well no question about it. So, but let's take that same scenario: Volkswagen size meteorite impacting the ocean. Well, I'm going to assume, just an assumption from all the literature that I've read in regards to what may take place, because no one's actually ever experienced it. It's it's a summarization of what people believe may happen. But even if you had a not a tsunami, but basically a transition wave that displaced in the ocean and then came onto land, you're probably talking something on the upwards. I'm just going to guesstimate somewhere anywhere between 50 feet to 100 feet of displacement wave that would come into into land. But here's the deal: displacement wave is very large. It's very thick. It's like think about a brick wall that's a couple hundred miles in thickness, coming in all at once and then subsiding. Think about that, what that would do. That in itself alone probably come in, I would say, I'm going to guesstimate probably anywhere from 10 to 20 miles inshore, decimating most of the coastlines.
I think you'd have to think there would be less of a chance of an ELE event if it impacted land than it would the ocean, right? That's been brought up a lot. I guess it depends if it hits a new building.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about it. Look at all the different type of landscapes, all the different types of land structures that we have. You have marshy land, you have very hard land, solid land. It could impact into granite. It could impact. Let's talk about the Chicxulub, for instance. That basically, that was probably landmass that was probably sitting, above the water line, and maybe when that impacted, submerged that, because you can clearly see from satellite photos of the size of the impact crater. You're talking about Chicxulub is 100, 200 miles in diameter, maybe larger, but probably the size of that impact, asteroid that hit was probably about the size of that asteroid that just passed, a few weeks back, 1.7 miles in diameter.
Yeah.
So imagine something that would be twice the size of that, 3 times the size of that, and that, I think, I'm not going to say that the scientific evidence is wrong. I'm just saying no one's ever experienced it. They've tried to, back engineer the events that have taken place on the planet to come to a conclusion. No one's ever experienced it. None of us. So we really don't know. But it's just a summarization of what may happen. But I'm thinking, that's scary enough. Look, have you guys been on JPL's, near Earth objects lately? Have you guys been there at all?
I have the tab open. We were just talking about LR6.
There are literally hundreds, and they're just we just found, what was it, the LR6? We just found it on the 6th.
2 hours. It'll be about almost 3 hours and 10 minutes that it just passed by Earth.
There you go. And my summarization of that is that most of these things, I think, travel in pairs or triplets, or probably a lot more. They're just not visible, because if you listen to what was said about this thing by an astrophysicist, the Italian astrophysicist, Mr. Masti, he says, well, it was so faint it was very hard to detect, but it was detectable. Now, if we go back to, what was it, 2012 DA
14?
14, whatever it was.
2006.
Yeah. Had our scientific body had any notion, any clue that we were going to have a companion come in, part as maybe a pack that was going to, explode over Russia? They had no clue. They were clueless. But the bottom line, that it was there and it happened. So you have to surmise at least that these things are not, lone wolf asteroids, that they probably, have companions. They travel together, probably very close-knit, but sometimes the Earth's gravitational pull, as weak as it is, will still draw them in. And then you figure out, after looking at the, JPL's near-Earth objects discoveries on a daily basis, you're going, my God, we're in a shooting gallery. You say to yourself, okay, it's not a question of if, it's just a question of when at this point.
Well, it's always been a question of when. You're right. It's just that we've finally looked out the window, and like I said before, we can't see half of them, and they come as a complete surprise. And if we didn't have the NEO program operational, I'd be surprised if we'd be able to launch anything into space, to be honest, because it would collide with something. If we had have known all the information we have now when we were doing, say, the Gemini program, I think we'd be horribly mortified. We would have been so careful as to attempt to avoid these things, but we went in blind. And yes, I know it's vast, and even two satellites going close to each other is extremely rare occurrence. But, it's still possible. There's still micro-objects. But what I was going to say was, I'm going to drag it back to Apophis for a second, because I love this. It's 325 meters, or 1,000 feet across. Now, if you've seen anyone doing fluid dynamics, if you drop a drop of water into a thin film of water, you get what's called the crown effect.
Right.
Right? And there's an up and down.
Very familiar with that, by the way, David. Very familiar. I watch that stuff. Oh, yeah.
I did it with a camera. I did it with an early camera as fast as, and did it, 100 times trying to get that perfect shot. So, I know just how hard that is to see it, but myself, rather than just, relying on someone else's footage. I wanted to actually capture it. But a 300-meter asteroid hitting in water that is about 300 meters deep means it'll touch the bottom as the top is still, level with the surface.
Absolutely.
The crown effect occurs because the entire mass of the droplet coming down hits a thin film and causes it with surface tension to break out into this crown effect. Now, that's the kind of displacement differential that I would expect from a large body hitting a shallow ocean, or shallow compared to the object. So when you said something only about VW or bus size having a significant, comparatively significant rise, you can only imagine the effect if you had something that was 1,000 feet across,
right,
that slammed into at least, hopefully, 1,000 feet deep water. If not, if it was shallower, you're going to get a lot of crustal displacement at the bottom of the ocean.
And that's where I was going. Exactly. You brought the point up. I think it would fracture all the plates like a bell around the planet, causing earthquakes all over the planet.
And also, you can imagine, like squeezing a sponge, you're going to have protrusions of, volcanic eruptions all around at the weak points. It's just going to blow all the caps.
Yep.
I can see that.
You get no disagreement from you. I agree exactly with what you're saying, because once you the water is being vaporized as this object is traveling, let's say at approximately, let's just say 50,000 miles per hour. It might have a slight slowdown, but the Earth's atmosphere will not protect us from this object being at a certain mass. The only hope we would probably have for anything like this is that it would fracture as it's coming in. That would be our best and greatest hope. And I think we've probably seen that in the past. have not been so lucky in the past, by the way, but from some very large objects. I mean, yeah, I know, I'm sure, David, that you're very familiar with the very small impact that just took place on the moon. What was it, a couple months ago? Observed.
If you have anything at all, any kind of footage, can you paste it into our chat and possibly into the
It's actually on YouTube. You can download it. It's been posted by many, many people, so it's available on YouTube. It's not something that I ever downloaded, but it's there.
You had the link.
Yeah.
Anything we can search for, just to help out, that'd be awesome.
Hold on a minute.
I haven't seen it myself, and I've been waiting for a significant impact to hit the moon because it's such a good vantage point for us. Yeah.
Absolutely, and here's the funny thing. First of all, they say that there's, these things are very rare occurrences, and then NASA comes out and says, "Oh, by the way, we witnessed more than one of these things take place." And this is, how can they come out with this information? And go, well, these are very rare occurrences, and then all of a sudden they turn around and say, well, within the last decade or so, we've seen many of these impacts take place. Mm-hmm. It's just an absurdity.
Have you not told us? Yeah, it's very rare, but we've seen lots of them.
So what I'm trying to do is, okay, hold on. I'm going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and type, you guys talk, and I'm going to see what I can download and post in the chat, okay?
Already posted for you, bud.
Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah.
Well, why didn't you tell me that? Making me work like...
No, gotta keep the Skype chat open.
Breaking my heart, man.
So, Robert, one thing that you'll probably also not disagree with is in the center of the crowning effect, what you get is a large body of water being swooshed up in the air vertically.
Without a question.
Yeah, and it also comes back down, and it has a subsequent wave coming from it, outbound. And that's why when you see, a droplet in a pond, you get like three waves, and one of them is bigger than the other two. And there's a small one, the leading one, and a preceding one. But not only that, but if you have a deep ocean impact where it does the same thing, you've got, and you think about the weight or the mass of the water that's just been displaced.
Exactly.
All of that water comes back in on itself and creates an even larger displacement than you think the crown was ever, because the crown isn't as big as the center swoosh. And I'm using a scientific term.
No, and I got you. And what I would say is probably there's a duality in that where it probably creates the first massive displacement wave. And then as the water comes back down, what I think it acts almost like in a tsunami fashion, where you have that droplet hit, like you said, the droplet. If you take a drop of water and just, plop it into the ocean, it has that, the circumference wave which ripples out in 2, 3, 4, and 5 waves. So there's probably the dual effect to all that.
Oh, yeah.
So I think there's both of those things taking place at the same time.
Well, see, I'm thinking that the first wave, if you think about this as like an earthquake, the first wave is the A wave, the elastic, like the elastic wave, yeah? And the S wave and you can see the S wave as being the vertical wave.
Several
Exactly.
of them following.
Absolutely. Right. I agree with you. I agree. Though none of us have ever witnessed this, I feel that we are going to witness this pretty soon here. I mean, with everything that's going on, it's just an absurdity. I mean, you take the other side of it. Let's look at the remote viewing side of all this information coming out from these guys going, hey, we have seen this. These guys are pretty good. Now, I'm going to say this, that they are, the one thing they are extremely fallible on, and it comes to all of it. Just recently I've had to come to terms with that. But it's the timeline process. Mm-hmm. They don't know the timeline. But they have seen the events take place. Mm-hmm. And I say that when this event takes place, again, not if, because I think we all realize that we're in that shooting gallery, when it takes place, we're probably going to be witness to one of the greatest events in human history. Now, with that being said, I think we pretty much all understand that what is involved in the loss of human life in this. It's not a joke. It's not a joke at all.
No.
Okay.
I think we stare at the possibility of this with humility. Man, it's the only way to defend ourselves against the pain of seeing someone die is either through comedy or just having to laugh it away. And if you hear me laugh about this at all, two things. The reason why I'm laughing is the enormity of it is just so overwhelming as a result of any of these things we talk about. And these are serious topics.
Absolutely.
You know, the outcome, the loss
without a question,
it's awful. The Sumatran earthquake, which wiped out, you don't know how many people away. You do.
Yeah, it was 300,000 people.
Exactly.
300,000 people died.
And that's above us. Yeah, it's above Australia, and we know because we're on that ocean. Yeah, and it was awful. You can see that any of these impacts we're talking about tonight could have a tenfold, 100-fold, magnitude increase on that, the devastation. So, we're not laughing about it, and we're talking about on our show on Shining Side Out that there was an impact in the past, and it led to it being described by the people not in the direct vicinity of a large impact. But the descriptions match a large impact, and around the world, it appears as though there was a flood. There was a huge flood that lasted so many days, and you can only imagine the vaporization of water would cause huge clouds with this kind of rain, significant rain impact. So, Rob, take it away.
No, I mean, you're doing a fine job. I mean, you think about the exactly what you just said. An impact, whatever the size of, the mass coming in, it's really not so much at this point of the actual mass of the object, but it's actually the speed. That is what causes the devastation. People go, well, the mass of this thing. No, it's really not the mass. It's the speed which causes the devastation, because you could have a mass, let's say, that's, a mile and a half across. But if it's only coming in at 132 miles an hour,
mm-hmm.
it would barely, cause a tsunami. Barely cause a tsunami.
Yeah.
But if something is traveling at 50,000 miles an hour, it would be a flash in the sky, because it would not vaporize. Our Earth's atmosphere could not slow down, or barely slow down. It would impact the ocean. And I'll tell you, if you are in the vicinities and you can actually look at this thing, if you can actually view it and witness it, you're not going to be around to tell the story afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's how devastating it will be.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely agree with the, people call it mythology. I don't think it's mythology at all. I think it's actual... I think it's actually documented evidence that people witnessed this multiple times on the planet, and yet the one saving grace I will say or add to this, David, is that because those documents survived and because humanity is still here, that means humanity survived this. It's not an extinction level event where the planet is completely wiped out. This probably may have happened in Earth's very ancient past. We're talking about the billions of years when our solar system was probably still in the process of being formed. But as all the debris was gathered up, of course, we have the asteroid belt. There's the Kuiper belt, which is probably more debris out there as well. It's situated itself, but there's still a lot of that garbage left over, but we're very lucky in the sense that probably most of that debris that's left out there is very small. A mile and a half, 2 miles. Sure, there's some objects out there that are still much larger, but I think the potential for that is very limited, but I think for the potential for a lot of these smaller objects, which can still cause devastating effects on the planet, are all there because we are viewing them and capturing them and posting them every day, through JPL.
Pardon me. NASA has hang on one second. Oh, that's better. The the Sumerian texts suggest that there was a proto-Earth or an Earth different to this one that had suffered an impact so significant that, it lost like a third of its mass. NASA suggests that through their own findings, whether or not they just read the Sumerian text and copied it or not, but they tend to believe the same thing. Their hypothesis is that there was a young Earth and it was hit by a large object, and the remnants of that are the asteroid belt, and that we moved in our, possibly the moon was created at this point as well, with the result of the ejector. So you're right. I think a lot of those large objects are gone. But when you're talking about an object that doesn't seem very large, like a mile across,
right?
Like the tornado that just went through
the F5 in Oklahoma. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a mile across. Compared to the Earth, it's tiny. But if you flop that in the ocean at 50,000 miles an hour, you're going to have a 10-mile high wave. As like an A wave.
Let me ask you about this, because there's been a lot of differentiating opinions about this, because Earth's gravity has it has a certain gravitational effect. So I don't think, and this is coming from me, this is my personal belief. I think only even a displacement wave caused by an impact could only reach a certain level of of height just because of gravitational effects on the Earth. I think even in the largest impact, and meaning by the largest, where it's an extinction level event. Let's say that this rock is, let's take it for instance, 15 miles in diameter, which is enormous. I think the ocean level would only be able to reach a certain height just because of gravitational effects. I would say it probably couldn't reach probably more than than a half a mile in height.
Well, remember, and I forget which one it was. Was it Small Boy nuclear subsurface test?
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
We saw that rise a mile in the air.
But that's a different effect.
I know. No,
I'm with you. Effect.
I completely understand the physics around the direction of the outward force and how that created. It's no different than doing a depth charge.
Right.
So it seems like a hugely disproportionate amount of water goes in the air.
Correct. It's not a displacement. It's just disproportional water being blown out because there's not enough volume or speed or impact to create that. But no, I know where you're coming from. But I'm just saying, let's look at I'm just going to go with the fact that, let's look at the basins of the oceans for the most part. On a level playing field, let's take an average of a mile down. Mm-hmm. So let's say there's only a mile of water between, the surface and the bottom. I think it couldn't displace more than that in and of itself. Because
because we all know that when a tsunami's coming, it has to pull the water from somewhere to build the height of the wall.
Right.
Water. Yeah. So
right.
if it was coming, say, at 200 kilometers an hour, racing across the ocean.
Much faster than that. Much faster.
Yes. Yeah. And it could not. I'm just saying the wave displacement wave, the A wave, if it was coming towards the coastline, even at 200 kilometers an hour or miles an hour, whatever, it wouldn't be able to move the water quick enough to form a wave. But it would be certainly a very long wave, and it would only, and we know the maths is 1/3 above the water's normal height, and 2/3 below is the normal displacement of a wave through its movement in water. And it's only when it hits the ocean and the 2/3 are starting to be compressed that it has to push the water up. So, and that's it. And it always pulls the water from the preceding water. Is how it gets its wave height. Is from the preceding water. It's traveling faster over that same distance. It consumes the water in front of it, and it starts to pile towards the front of that oncoming wave. That's because it slows down. That's the only way that wave can exist. So I find it hard to also think of a wave height of 10 miles high. When I listen to the physicist, he's an African-American physicist who's spoken about the Apophis thing over and over again, and I've listened to all of his work, and I've tried to back it up with maths, and I've even done, scale objects into water at the same depth as the object to have a look to see how that impact would affect it. Yeah, we have economies of scale and, the physics of hydrodynamics on a larger scale.
Yes.
Doesn't really match what I'm trying to replicate, but at least I can get an idea. And I can't see the 10 mile high wave height. Even slapping my hand into water as hard as I can, I don't see a displacement wave moving out from my hand any greater than, say, 2 or 3 times the depth of water.
Right. And the reason, and I'm going to agree with you, and one of the reasons I believe that's actually true is because water, if you're impacting water, think about this, guys. I think we've all done this as kids, right? You jump off the high dive of your pool, and if you spread yourself out, you hit like a brick on the water, and it is painful. I think we've all, I know I've done
belly
it.
busters.
Yeah, exactly. And the water doesn't really displace all that much, does it? But it sure causes a lot of physical pain in the body. But, with that being said, there's also the factor, like I said earlier, where there's only so much water to displace. Now, you have the deepest oceans and the shallowest oceans. So if you take just an average variable, I'm going to say about 1 mile, worldwide. Yes, without a question. Think about a 1 mile wave coming up out of the water. I mean, that would probably cause heart attacks, worldwide. People would probably drop dead even hearing that. But the inundation part is probably the bigger part of all this, because it is the wavelength that is so devastating.
We're talking the 20 to 30 miles.
Thank you. I would say probably at least 100 miles. At least 100 miles.
Yeah, I'm depending on how big how big that is. Now, we saw the same thing with the Fukushima, like the Japan tsunami. How it wasn't just a wave of water. Behind it was the rest of that water at that height. So the wave was only the front edge of that, and it just kept stepping up the current height against the shore. Surprisingly so.
Exactly, David. So if you take that, what those inundations that kept coming in, now take that and try and compact that into one displacement wave. Well, I mean, it would have probably caused 10 times the amount of devastation that it actually did. And it probably would have went a lot further inland.
Oh, yeah,
but
definitely.
In reality, I mean, look, 20,000 people died within, 10 minutes. That was the reality of it.
Completely. That's the sadness. Yeah, the sad part of this.
Yeah, I know.
It's going to cause this, and, it's okay for us to postulate and say, what would, summarize the poor effects of these things. But you know what, guys? I mean, this is reality. It's happened before. There is a seahorse that's found in the Pacific Ocean off the Andes Mountains, where the what's the highest lake again? Titicaca? No, not Titicaca.
Yeah, it is. It is Lake Titicaca.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There is a seahorse that's found in that lake that is only found in the Pacific Ocean against the seashore.
And there's only one explanation for that.
Yep, a wave over the top.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only other place it's found, it would have been found in all the other lakes if it had been there. But it's
absolutely.
And they're one of the most fragile creatures you can possibly imagine.
It's funny if you think about the microbial life compared to the very large, mammal sea life in the ocean. You would think that probably the microbial, very small in an arena like this, in a devastating cataclysmic impact, they would probably be the survivors. And I think that's been proven. This very small creatures absolutely have a way of surviving this, where the larger mammals are the ones who go through the extinction level events. I think it's pretty much been proven in the past, even through the KT boundary events, which have been talked about numerous times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, across the KT. That's the first thing that I looked for in Australia was the KT, and I could find it. You can also see the thin iron layer. Have you seen that before?
No.
Found all across the world. There's a thin iron layer, and it's there was a number of impacts, depending on which continent you're on. There was a number of impacts which were not ocean, but the land-borne impacts, and it contains iridium.
Were they simultaneous impacts or at different time frames?
Well, it appears as though they're in 10,000 years of each other.
Okay. Well, that, in a cosmic sense, that is simultaneous. Yeah.
And so across here, we've got 600 meters, say 600 yards of sandstone, which can only be made under pressure, which means it was glaciated at some point. And inside that are a number of layers. And one of those, there's a point there where there was some sediment laid down, but above that is this layer of iron, rusted iron, and it's across the whole continent. And it appears as though there was a large iron meteorite that hit, and it was so significant that it caused the rock strata to completely melt, and it made all of the spheres, and it turned the sand to glass where it hit. But outside of that, it was so much ejecta that it rained down iridium and iron ore, and it ended up rusting in places, and maybe an inch thick in some places.
Now, I've heard both sides of the argument, and they talked about the Gobi Desert, where they basically found, green glass, which is basically a nuclear impact, which probably an iron meteorite would probably create the same thing without the radiation of what, a nuclear weapon would do. Yet they've found different areas within that Gobi Desert where it's very irradiated. And I just don't know what to make of that. I find that extremely bizarre, either in our ancient past, and we're going back, hundreds of thousands of years, that we had already, as a human species, maybe a different type of species, but, humanoid, had already reached that pinnacle, blew ourselves up, or we were impacted, or maybe both at that same time.
You can only period. Yeah, look, just think about how close we were the other day. The other month when Russia had that inbound. Now, if it was during the Cold War and it was a little closer to Mexico to Moscow, it could have been determined just off the bat that was in fact an impact. It was an inbound, and maybe it was a nuke. Maybe they pushed the button as a result of that. You can only imagine through the depths of a Cold War.
And through our manipulated media, by the way, that you would have never got the truth at that point.
Exactly. It would have been too late for the truth.
Yeah.
But it could have been determined. Sorry, John?
Yeah, that was one of the stories that came out right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a scary thing that we're just lucky because, I'm a kid from the 80s who didn't know whether the world was going to end tomorrow or not. No, serious. And
David, how old are you?
I'm 46.
You're the same age as me, 46. I'm going to be 47 next month, by the way.
Awesome. So my ex-wife was in a film about that in Australia. It was called One Night Stand. Disappointingly, it wasn't. It was maybe M-rated, and it was about this young group of people. It's I shouldn't say a terrible movie. It just didn't have a budget, and they sort of held up inside the Opera House. And then they went to an underground railway station, and the candle went out. It was the last one, and the station platform was full of people waiting for this nuclear, strike. And the whole of Europe had already been taken out. We were one of the last countries to wait for this impact, and that was it. And that sort of hit home with me already all the way back then, yeah?
Well, think about this, that we had the same film basically come out around the same era called The Day After.
Yes.
where there were nuclear. Remember that with the nuclear impacts taking place, and the scenario, the story took place in Kansas, and it was basically almost the same scenario.
Yeah, yeah. So it's one of those. It's just one of those things, you know. We live through this, and to come through that unscathed, only to, you know, to come into this era of human knowledge, where, you know, I agree that my thoughts are we've already had civilization on the planet beforehand, and it just disturbs
multiple times. I agree
exactly.
with you 100%.
And I don't even think they're always humans. Like the,
and I
like
agree.
the guy
and I agree with that.
Yeah, like the guy on Ravenstar's show says that it's a possibility, and even NASA has gone down this path of investigating what the dinosaurs would have looked like had they, you know, made it.
Well, I would
into a humanoid fact, you know.
I would always say that they want to allude to something without ever really giving any information out.
Of course,
because they are part. They're always, you know, they say it's a civil, you know, it is a civilian. Civilian network. That's a bunch of nonsense. Look, it's all a bunch of contrived nonsense. It's all a part and of the military industrial complex, which is run and owned by the bankers. So we know that. So we'll never, you know, NASA never get a straight answer, right? CIA, crooks in action, so on and so forth. That's the bottom line. So it is up to us. I think this is, you know, I tend to talk about this as taking responsibility. And this is what we're doing by doing shows like this. We are taking responsibility for the people who are inept or who are too afraid or feel that their life is just so compromised that if they ever came out, that they would be ridiculed, killed, their families would be killed. So we're doing what I think we should have done, all of us should have done long ago, but now we're doing this. And, you know, there might be a different outcome to the reality of what I think we've all been lied about. I just did Friday night. I had my second hour guest, Len Kasten, who just wrote he just came out with his second book, Secret Journey to a Planet Serpo. You know, you think about this. This is during the Eisenhower administration, where, you know, the Ebens landed, came down. We had contact, communication. They shared some technology with us, and then 12, let's call them astronauts, went to spend 10 years on planet Serpo. Well, the funny part is, here it is, you know, the director Steven Spielberg, and this is going back to 75. Right. Remember, you know, he gets this just incredible idea and writes this thing, the whole movie, the whole script, over a weekend. I would hardly think so, because Hollywood doesn't work that way. There are just circumstances which are overwhelming when you really dive deep into this stuff and going, look, we know our government, at least as far as I'm concerned, I know our government, or probably most governments, have been in contact with most of a lot of beings. Just for instance, you know, the Ebens. I'm just going to stay with that. That there has been an exchange program going on for many generations at this point. Our technology has probably been advanced and derived from these guys, and we have been able to take that technology, back engineer it to not maybe make it look so much alien, but incorporate it into our own lives, where we say, oh, well, look, we just had these incredible advancements, and you know, and it was all done by human beings. I would hardly think so at this point.
Yeah. Look, you've said so many points in that, it's hard to remember them all. I'll try and go back until I forget what you were talking about, but I completely agree in everything you've said. Remember when the stealth fighter, the angular stealth fighter, came out?
Yes. My
first glimpse of that was to dissect it into four from vertically, so cut it like a sandwich into 4 pieces, and look at the cross section. And I thought, well, that cross section is sufficient to be able to have, you know, like a flying disc inside it.
Without a question.
No one has satisfied my curiosity yet as to say that they've seen it at the end point of when it's dropping its load. Yeah? So, there's footage of it, of, B-52s and F-118s and, 16s, the Hornets and everything during their test. During their testing and during warfare, you can see them shooting and fighting and dropping bombs, whatever their objective is. But to this day, at the end point, at their target, there hasn't been any footage of these things. And I reckon they've either got a complete cloak, and that the technology is completely foreign to us, and that we just sort of wrapped it in that flight-looking kind of thing to make it look like it. Now, if there's someone who's flown in one of those, call me up.
Which does make sense, by the way, what you're saying. It absolutely makes sense because, we're talking about all these triangular crafts that have been witnessed all over the planet, but most of these sightings of these triangular crafts have only been within the 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you this follows right along the line of what you're saying. If you take the fact that they've back-engineered some of this technology, or at least were given some of this technology, so let's go
Let's go the friendly route, yeah?
Yeah, let's go with the friendly route. And you say, okay, we've been given this technology, but limited technology, and let's say that some of our scientific black ops body have been able to back-engineer this. We're at least were enabled to learn enough about it to create anti-gravity to a certain degree. So here you are, these huge triangle crafts, like you just mentioned, where there's probably some sort of anti-gravity circular momentum that is creating lighter than conventional flight lift for a lot of these crafts. That's why you probably don't hear a lot of noises from these crafts, and but there has been reported that there have been some noise coming from these crafts, where from conventional UFOs you get different stories.
You get nothing.
Yeah. Exactly.
In my experience, because I've seen 3, and I've had nothing whatsoever.
Exactly.
And no output sound, nothing, and they don't behave like in the normal flight characteristics of an aircraft.
Yeah, I agree.
And just imagine the thrust to weight ratio of an object that you can reduce its mass.
Right.
That would be extraordinary. You'd be able to outturn. If you could make your little reality bubble around it, then you could do, instantaneous acceleration. Or like I tried to explain to everyone, the way it's been described to me is that they hold on to where they currently are, pull where they're going to go to them, and let go of where they were, and suddenly they're at the destination.
Kind of like a slingshot.
Yeah, but they don't actually go anywhere. They don't actually move through that. Right. They pull where they want to go to it.
Right. Instead of you being in the rubber band, being slinged, it's the exact opposite.
Exactly. It's everything else moves in comparison to you.
Right.
That's why it's not like was it not Knight Rider? Which one was the one where the guy drove around in the car and he'd be slammed up inside of the car, inside the glass? When we were teenagers, it was a show. Oh, never mind. So instead of, feeling the effects of the laws of physics inside this little reality bubble, it doesn't work like that. So, I'm...
But you know what? I want to bring up something else as well.
Yeah, go on.
Is that a lot of these, the shows that we watch, I think a lot of information is released, absolutely, in my mind, without a question, released to Hollywood, and then, given a bit of information, whether esoteric or not, through, the governmental bodies. There's a lot of science fiction shows created about this. For instance, one of the things that always intrigued me, like the show Doctor Who. And I loved it in Doctor Who. And here's the deal: and you're a product of the '80s, just like I am. So you remember the original Doctor Who?
Oh yeah.
Where the guy walked into a phone booth and he opened the door, and the place was an entire gigantic building.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, if you step outside it, it's just a small little phone booth.
That's right.
So the dimensional properties, which have been exhibited and been talked about by a lot of people who had the experiences within the craft, talk exactly about that.
Yep.
Where the craft is very small, but they go inside and it's like a giant warehouse.
Mm. Oh, completely. And the fellow who was on the show on Ravenstar said that they're like, this is what I've always said, one step into your room, one step out. But when you go out, you're somewhere else.
Right.
It's only one step. They seem to be able to lean into your reality from wherever it is, somewhere else. What I was going to also say, and I think I'm forgetting it as I'm talking about this, yes I am, and I'm stalling and I can't get it. We've only got 7 minutes left, but I was going to ask, we've talked about dimensions, we've talked about alien craft. That's right, I've got it back. But it was a military guy that I saw on the Discovery Channel, because, Discovery Channel is universal now, it's all around the world. He was talking about, it was a show on the helicopter, and it was the brand new one that's got the tilted rear rotor, and it's all enclosed, and it's typically angular like all of the, radar-absorbing painted objects with reflective surfaces away from the origin of the radar. Awesome thing. It looks fantastic. However, he says that this is the last helicopter we'll purchase, and the next one will be anti-gravity. And he was, it's a general in the army, head of procurement of new technology. And he let that slip. And you keep saying, and you've said this a couple of times already tonight, and that is that, whether or not we're subsequent to the slow release of material, either, on the surface or esoterically, maybe it's telepathic, or maybe there's this centralized consciousness that all the creative people are picking up from the people who are trying to be subversive about the technology. And I give you one more example. Mel Brooks, the writer of Get Smart.
Love Mel Brooks, by the way.
Did you know this? Do you know he was approached by the triple letter agencies at the time during the Cold War and saying, who is leaking this information to you? And he goes, what? He goes, the shoe phone, the pen camera, all of those things that Mel Brooks put into Maxwell Smart at the time were highly top secret things that had just been created. And here he is, Mel Brooks on Maxwell Smart, making the same things. And they were trying to drill him for contacts, saying who in the agency is giving this stuff away. And he goes, I just thought about it. It'd be really cool. Wouldn't it be cool?
In my opinion, I think, there's that duality that exists. Yes, it is completely lopsided at this point. I mean, look what we're going through in this massive financial crisis being perpetrated by the oligarchs, which are basically our overlords. But there are good people. I truly believe this. There are good people on the inside, or we would never get any information, and the events would simply happen, and we would really, really be completely and totally 100% enslaved. So it's not a 100% enslavement. They're giving us that ability to fight back at this point. But I think, again, it comes down to us and our responsibilities as human beings to be responsible for ourselves, to take action, and to get humanity back on track to where we need to be. Because you know what, and David, I don't know if you've ever listened to my show, but I have a communication through a channel source through Alma Guthrie, which I've had multiple experiences, by the way, and they simply said, look, we're waiting for you people to grow up. We're waiting for you. Put away the matches. It's time to grow up, because we're simply waiting. And when the events take place, physical or whatnot, we will be here. We will be here for you, but you need to take action for yourselves. In other words, to grow up and join the galactic community.
Mm-hmm. Here. I don't think I've heard it better myself.
Well,
I too, no problems, Robert. I too I've been shown and and told that there's a thing that we need to do and that there's